This is Oklahoma Inside Out, a weekly broadcast of Cimarron Alliance that focuses on the issues, culture, and people important to LGBT Oklahomans. And now, here's your host for Oklahoma Inside Out, Scott J. Hamilton.
Hi, and welcome to Oklahoma Inside Out. I'm glad you're with us today because we are going to be taking a look at life well beyond Oklahoma City and explore what's happening in the LGBT advocacy movement throughout the country and indeed throughout the world. Our guest today has just returned from the largest LGBT conference in the world, and I'm anxious for all of us to learn what she learned there. First, though, I want to say a very special word of thanks to Dr. Brian Stice from the Veterans Administration. He serves as chair of the Suicide Prevention Council for the state of Oklahoma and was our guest last week. Great information, and we'll be talking more about suicide in the months to come and how we can all help our friends. We have a great show today. I'm awfully glad that you're here, and I'm glad that you're here with us every week. We'll be back with our guest after we take a quick look at news making the headlines this week. Two men from Mali who were scheduled to be executed for allegedly having gay sex were saved by the French military. I was in prison and I was waiting to be executed the next day when I heard bombing throughout the night, one of the men said. In the morning, a crowd arrived, breaking my cell door to get me out. They told me that I was free. The city is liberated from Islamists. Last week, we told you that the Boy Scouts of America had reversed its long-standing prohibition against allowing gays to become scouts or leaders. Now the organization has reversed itself again, saying they need more time to study the situation. This latest decision is certain to cost the organization millions of dollars in lost financial support. Finally, and this is the biggest headline this week, Cimarron Alliance has signed the lease and will be opening the Cimarron Alliance Equality Center in March. The 4,000 square foot facility located at 5613 North May Avenue in Oklahoma City is a major step forward towards equality for all LGBT Oklahomans. It will allow for an immediate expansion of programs and services and will be open to everyone. The grand opening reception will be Thursday, March 21st. These are headlines making the news this week. Welcome once again to Oklahoma Inside Out. I'm happy that you're with us today because our guest is going to be bringing some insight about the LGBT movement around the country and around the world. She's been a very, very important part of the Cimarron Alliance family for some time. She is now co-chair of our board of directors. She's a social worker here in Oklahoma City and a great, great straight ally. It's my privilege to welcome to Oklahoma Inside Out today, Kathryn Primas. Kathryn, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
I have to tell you that I'm jealous for two reasons. One, because I love this conference and just could not get away to go this year. And the other reason, I saw the bag that they gave you, and it's a lot better than the bags they normally give out. So I'm really jealous of the great bag you brought back. So let's talk a little bit about, before we get into specifics, what was it like for you knowing what we're doing here in Oklahoma City? What was it like for you to be around that many LGBT people and supporters and allies all in one place for one thing? It can be kind of overwhelming.
It was overwhelming. It was definitely the largest conference I've ever been to. They have very well-structured workshops, and you could really get specific based on what your center is currently working on and what your center's goals are for this year. You could kind of tailor your experience to meet those needs. So I did enjoy that.
Tell me about some of the people that you talked to, that you met in sessions or just in corridor conversations.
I met mostly other professionals working in the area, a lot of people from youth centers and different youth programs, a lot of campus people, which I was kind of surprised by, actually conducting workshops and attending them. And I met a lot of executive directors. I met the executive director of the task force at one of the parties that they had. So it was very interesting, but it was a nice mix. I found there were a lot of mix of just regular people who are interested in what's going on with the movement, professionals who are working in some form or another with the LGBT community, and then there were also just a lot of leaders of the community that were there just to gain knowledge.
Were there a lot of young people there this year, like high school kids?
There were a few. I saw a few.
That's always very impressive to me when I see young people who are already working in an activist or an advocate role for something that they believe in that's important to them. And that's always a highlight. Last year, it brought me to tears because I saw cadets from West Point that were there for the first time they could have ever been there in their uniforms. So there are lots of firsts for me at this conference. Anything stand out for you as, I guess, lifting up a real sense of hope for LGBT equality?
Well, it was the first conference they've had where we had a special televised message from the president. So that was very empowering and uplifting. And it was just positive to see that in just a regular city in the U.S., you can actually have the conference. There are that many people in attendance. There are over 3,000 people in attendance at the conference. There are over, I believe, 250 workshops. And just to see that level of organization and the way the city welcomed everybody, and the hotel, the Hilton, I know they even made a donation to the task force after the conference. So,
did you meet any Real Housewives of Atlanta while you were there?
I actually have never watched that show, so I do not know what they
so
look
you
like.
wouldn't know if they came up and
No.
bit you. You mentioned the president, and clearly the Obama administration has been a strong supporter. Were there any governmental workshops that you were aware of while you were there?
There were a couple of them I was aware of. I did not attend those. And I believe that another person who attended with me went to at least one of them, but okay. I didn't attend any of those.
We should mention that Jeremy Hood, our past board chair, also attended, and he and I usually travel together at these conferences. So it was. I'm glad that he was able to be there because he has some history coming into it. And I know the first time that I went, you used the word overwhelming. It's like, how do you even decide? Now you went to one of the day-long institutes, didn't you?
I went to 2 day-long institutes. I went to the first one on the very first day of the conference, and that was the Racial Justice Institute.
Okay.
And then the second day, I went to the Ally Institute.
Let's talk about the Ally first, because I want to get into the racial justice portion in a little bit. But how did you find other allies?
Well, the Ally one was actually very interesting because you could just be an ally to the community as a whole. There were some people there who were allies. They were doing a large focus on being more inclusive towards the transgender community, and so there are just some people who were allies for the transgender community. So there was a good mix in the Ally Institute, more than what I was thinking of when I thought Ally Institute.
Within that institute, did you pick up ideas on how to engage other straight allies in our work here?
I did to a certain extent. I more got information on how to make our work that we do here in Oklahoma more inclusive of transgender communities, of expanding more to incorporate more people who are in the larger community. But we did get some good information on how to make more of my other friends who could be allies just aware that these things are being overlooked in larger society, and you do need to make an effort to actually focus on equality and do things for equality.
We'll be back right after this break.
Hi, I'm David Macy, a board member of the Cimarron Alliance, and I'm asking for your help. We work every single day to make life better for gay Oklahomans, now and for generations to come, but we can't do it without you. Please consider making a gift of just $20 a month to the Cimarron Alliance and be a part of our march toward equality. Visit www.cimarronalliance.org today and make your pledge. It's a gift you can feel good about giving.
It's a brand new year, and the Oklahoma Observer has a brand new look. We asked our readers what they wanted, and we've given it to them. Now, the Oklahoma Observer arrives in your mailbox in a convenient magazine format. That means more room for more stories that are important to you. What's more, our online version at www.okobserver.net is updated throughout the day, so you have instant access to the news, analysis, and in-depth reporting that you just can't find anywhere else. The legislature will soon be in session, and you can count on the Oklahoma Observer to be your eyes and ears at the Capitol and beyond. If you're a progressive Oklahoman, you owe it to yourself to be informed about issues and legislation that impact you, your family, and the LGBT community. Visit www.okobserver.net today. Our only agenda is to provide critical news to critical thinkers.
You're listening to Oklahoma Inside Out. I'm Scott J. Hamilton, and my guest today is Kathryn Primas. We're talking about the Creating Change conference that took place in Atlanta a couple of weeks ago. And I think that most people are aware that Cimarron is embarking upon the creation and will soon be opening the first LGBT Equality Center here in Oklahoma City. One of the challenges that we have had as an organization, and I think that we have as a community, is being inclusive. Let's talk a little bit about how Cimarron, how Pride, how all organizations might truly be more intentional in their inclusivity of trans folks.
Well, one thing that was easy to do, especially, focusing on us opening the first Equality Center, was at the conference they had the gender-neutral bathrooms. And I thought that was a great, it's a good sign when you first walk in and you see that there are gender-neutral bathrooms. Also, they talked about when you're doing groups, like focus groups and things like that, making sure you include people from all the different groups that you want to have represented and provide services to. Include them in your focus groups. Have people from all the different communities and subgroups involved in meetings and plannings right from the beginning if possible. And I think that would be really good for us because we are at the beginning of designing and developing new programs and finding out what the community needs. So we have a good opportunity to start now instead of trying to include people later.
I think that's very wise counsel because I think it's easy to be rather nearsighted in the work that we do, or that it just becomes so big that we don't think. And honestly, that's the part I think that we all have to become more aware of everyone around us. The second institute was on racial inclusion, right? Racial justice. That's also something that troubles me a great deal. And I see it more starkly, I think, in Oklahoma than I have in other cities, where not just in the LGBT community, but in much of the city, where there still is a great deal of segregation in places of worship, in communities where people live. And I won't say that there's segregation so much in the LGBT community as there is a lack of inclusivity. So I'm not so sure that it's an intentional segregating so much as it is a lack of welcoming and embrace. Any thoughts from what you learned at the conference on that issue?
Well, really, it was kind of the same as looking at, like, the example of including more transgender programs, having people from the different communities. When you look at your city, look at what your different racial groups are, have somebody from each community, if possible, involved in the planning, making sure that programs, advertising reflects cultural diversity. And people can see that when they look at any billboards we put up, or look at the Facebook page, or look on the website. If they see pictures of people, they see pictures of people that represent them, so that they know that this is a welcoming organization and they feel comfortable contacting the organization.
I'm a bit chagrined by what you said, because I've frequently talked to big groups, and I was recently at the OU Med School, and I asked them, I said, think back to the last time you walked into a doctor's office and you saw a picture of a same-gender couple. Because typically what you see is a white man, a white woman, and 2.3 white children in those smiling, happy, healthy photographs. And so we talked about that as being welcoming, but the reason I said I'm chagrined is because I don't think we do enough in the LGBT community to really put out there that we are working together. We are here for everyone. We want to be inclusive. So that's good advice, I think, that we all need to be very, very cognizant of.
Well, one thing we also talked about in a couple of my workshops was that when you're looking at funding sources, sometimes you have to be pretty specific. And it may be around race or sexual orientation or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so that can kind of encourage, I think, organizations to not necessarily focus on being inclusive, because I'm trying to get money for this one thing. And, sometimes you have to send in the advertising that you're doing and things like that, and you're focused on one group. So I think we can lose sight of trying to make sure we're being culturally diverse, because we're trying to be diverse on so many levels. And you're trying to make sure you're supporting your programs and funding your programs. And I think it just becomes easy to not focus on the big picture.
It does, but ultimately we all suffer because of that. And while getting a grant is a bad motivation to help someone to become more inclusive, I suppose if in the end it really does succeed in a greater mixing of folks based on race, then we've accomplished something there.
Right.
We're coming up on a break in just a few moments, but when we come back, I'd like for you to spend just a minute talking about the thing that comes to mind that inspired you the most, and where you see the movement as a whole, as we all work toward equality in many places around the country and around the world. Our guest today is Kathryn Primas, and we're talking about Creating Change, the conference NGLTF hosted in Atlanta just a couple of weeks ago.
Hi, I'm Loretta Taylor, past chair of Cimarron Alliance. I joined the board because I believe in the vision and the work of this organization. We're working every day listening to the concerns of our community and helping to address those very concerns. I hope you will consider supporting Cimarron with a gift. Even $10 a month will help. Working together, we really can achieve equality for all gay Oklahomans. Please visit www.cimarronalliance.org and make your gift today.
It's a brand new year, and the Oklahoma Observer has a brand new look. We asked our readers what they wanted, and we've given it to them. Now, the Oklahoma Observer arrives in your mailbox in a convenient magazine format. That means more room for more stories that are important to you. What's more, our online version at www.okobserver.net is updated throughout the day, so you have instant access to the news, analysis, and in-depth reporting that you just can't find anywhere else. The legislature will soon be in session, and you can count on the Oklahoma Observer to be your eyes and ears at the Capitol and beyond. If you're a progressive Oklahoman, you owe it to yourself to be informed about issues and legislation that impact you, your family, and the LGBT community. Visit www.okobserver.net today. Our only agenda is to provide critical news to critical thinkers.
You're listening to Oklahoma Inside Out. We're visiting with Kathryn Primas. Kathryn, anybody stand out as far as folks that you met along the way while you were at the conference, or at least the cities that they represented?
Minnesota was represented a lot, and a lot of the presenters that I seemed to come across were from Minnesota.
That's because they all wanted to get out of that cold weather and get to Atlanta for a few days.
So that was interesting. And then also I met a lot of people from Boston. I did a workshop that was being conducted by a group of people from Boston, and some of the supports they had that they talked about in the community of where they held different events. They were very interesting. Most of them were universities in terms of being able to get free space donated to hold meetings and things like that, because they didn't have a actual office. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, Minnesota, there were a lot of people from Minnesota.
Well, Minneapolis, St. Paul, they have for years been at the forefront of equality work for the LGBT community. Thinking about your overall experience, when you left to come home, did you have a sense of frustration, or a sense of hopefulness, or a sense that things are getting better, or can? What did you leave with overall? What was your impression?
My overall impression was that there was definitely a sense of hope for myself and for most people, I think, who were at the conference. It does seem to be there's progress being made. I mean, Obama's inauguration address, that just showed progress right there, and that happened the day before the conference started, or 2 days before the conference started. So it was a good week for the conference. And also, just to see the number of people who were there, the number of people who were actually there from different organizations that are trying to help teens, homeless teens, who are trying to work with the elderly. They're really touching on all different parts of the population, focused on many different problems within the population. There was a big theme at the conference about intersecting identities. So that's what they're talking about with the Racial Justice Institute, looking at different issues of poverty in different communities. So just the fact that the whole movement is looking at all the different parts of a person's identity and how they work together and addressing all those issues instead of just focusing on sexual orientation, gender identity, expression. They're really trying to make sure that the whole person's healthy.
And I think that's a great thing, because I hear people often say, and I've said myself, I'm not defined by my sexual orientation. I mean, when I'm talking to someone in the capacity of being an LGBT advocate, I'm certainly going to mention that I'm a gay man. But otherwise, it doesn't come up in conversation. Instead, there are other characteristics that I apply, and I think that that's true of all of us.
Well, and even one of my workshops, well, probably two of my workshops, did not deal with sexual orientation at all. They dealt with other issues specific to the community that was there, gathered there for that particular workshop. And it looked at, if you're working with a client, for myself, there may be other issues you have to address. Let's say you're working at a homeless shelter for LGBT youth. There may be some other issues you have to address that have nothing to do with sexual orientation before you can actually get to working with the client on that issue. And that agencies need to be open and welcoming to the fact that, we're not just going to be able to focus on this one issue. We've got to focus on everything that's going on with this person.
Wow. I think that's by itself, that's a great step forward, just to be able to recognize that among people who are here to help. Yeah, I'm glad that you went, and I'm awfully glad that you took the time today to share with us your experience. And you going again next year?
I think so. I'm excited about it. It's in Houston next year.
Oh, Houston. Okay, I'll be there with you. Our guest today has been Kathryn Primas. I'm so happy that she shared with us her experience, and we'll be putting that into effect and using it to better serve the Oklahoma LGBT community every day of the year. Our producer is Chris Moyer. Our office coordinator is PK Kelly Palmer. Cimarron Alliance board co-chairs are Kathryn Primas and Randall Marsh. Our announcer is Lisa Pizzeri. I want to thank you again for being with us, and I hope that you will tell your friends about this broadcast, because we are here to serve you 52 weeks a year. From all of us at Cimarron Alliance and Oklahoma Inside Out, I'm Scott J. Hamilton, thanking you for joining us. Hang on to the vision of a fair and just Oklahoma.
Oklahoma Inside Out is a production of Cimarron Alliance, Central Oklahoma's preeminent LGBT advocacy and education organization. If you have a topic you would like to hear discussed, or a person who you would like to hear interviewed, please call 405-495-9300 or email oklahomainsideout@cimarronalliance.org. Please feel free to share the link to this broadcast with your friends.